Luke Harper, a veteran officer with the local police department, is wrapping up his quiet shift in the small town of Ravenwood. It's an uneventful night, and he's cruising down a familiar street when he spots a young girl running toward him. She's around 6 or 7, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Her eyes are wide with terror, and she clutches a small, worn teddy bear to her chest. As she runs, she says 3 chilling words that unsettle Luke deeply. "They're still here." Luke pulls over and rushes to her side. Despite her small frame, she seems to be running from something, but when he questions her, she's too terrified to respond. The girl stares at him with wide, fearful eyes. Upon closer inspection, Luke notices the teddy bear, and something about it makes him feel uneasy. The bear seems familiar. A small shiver crawls down his spine. He helps her into his patrol car, trying to comfort her as he drives toward the station. He can't shake the sense that something is wrong, but he doesn't understand why yet. The girl remains silent in the back seat, clutching her bear and staring out the window. At the station, Luke calls in the girl's details to dispatch, but there's no record of her or her family. He's puzzled. No missing persons reports match her description. The girl doesn't speak, even as the officers try to console her. Luke can tell that she's frightened, but her silence only deepens the mystery. As the hours pass, Luke begins to feel the weight of the situation, especially when the girl's words echo in his mind. They're still here. In the meantime, Luke checks his childhood memories of Ravenwood, particularly the stories of disappearances that haunted the town in the 1980s. He had heard rumors of children vanishing, and there had been talk of strange things in the woods, but he'd never given it much thought. He's not prepared for how the past might collide with the present. Luke tries to get the girl to speak, but she's too frightened. However, when he offers her the teddy bear, she looks at it for the first time, whispering something he can't make out. At that moment, a wave of recognition crashes over him. The bear. It's a specific model tied to the unsolved cases of children's disappearances, a series of events that had terrified the community years ago. Luke starts researching the teddy bear. He recalls that it was part of a limited edition series released by a company in the early 1980s, and the bears were linked to a set of high-profile disappearances in the area. The children who vanished were said to have owned these bears, and the circumstances surrounding their disappearances were strange, involving cryptic messages or odd circumstances, similar to Sarah's situation. His research leads him to visit the town's library and speak to an elderly historian, Mrs. Adelaide Morris, who remembers the strange disappearances. She mentions that the Teddy Bear Company was known for holding contests for children, giving out bears that had been blessed or enchanted by an unknown source. Some of the missing children had received them in their youth. As he digs deeper, Luke starts seeing connections to his own childhood. He remembers a missing girl named Emma, whose disappearance he'd never understood. As Luke looks through old case files, he notices a pattern. The bears all seem to have an underlying connection that only becomes clear when viewed as part of a larger web of the town's dark history. Luke attempts to contact the girl's parents, but there's no record of them in the system. A disturbing realization dawns on him. Sarah doesn't seem to belong to anyone. She has no identification or familial ties. This fact unnerves him deeply. He takes her to a foster care worker, but Sarah reacts violently to being separated from Luke, as though she knows something terrible will happen if she is. Luke presses her to reveal more about her parents, but all she says is, "They're not my parents," and then goes silent again, clutching the bear tightly. Meanwhile, Luke also investigates the missing persons reports and realizes that many of the people involved in the disappearances were well known in town. The family histories of some of these individuals
are deeply entwined with the rituals he's beginning to understand. The bear, the girl, the stories from his childhood. Everything seems to point to something ancient and malevolent, buried just beneath the surface of the town's everyday life.
As Luke investigates further, he learns that Sarah has been living in a house on the outskirts of town, one that is rumored to be abandoned. Intrigued and uneasy, Luke and his partner, Detective Olivia Sykes, head out to the house to investigate. The house is old, decaying, and surrounded by an overgrowth of trees and vines. It seems to have been untouched for decades. Inside, they find strange symbols carved into the walls and floorboards. The house feels wrong. Too quiet, too still. Olivia begins to experience strange feelings, an overwhelming sense of being watched, as if the house itself is alive. Sarah's presence becomes more unsettling as she begins to mutter more cryptic words, and her behavior grows more erratic. Luke, however, is fixated on the bear, and as he looks around the house, he realizes the teddy bear's resemblance to old artifacts tied to local legends. Luke and Olivia delve into the history of the house. They discover it was once owned by a wealthy family who disappeared under mysterious circumstances decades ago. The local folklore suggests that the family had practiced dark rituals, attempting to communicate with spirits and summon entities from the beyond. The house, they learn, was built over a burial ground that was disturbed when construction began. The atmosphere grows increasingly tense as Luke experiences strange visions, flashes of the past, seeing the family in their final moments, performing rites and rituals that seem to tear the fabric of reality itself. In one such vision, Luke sees a terrifying figure, an entity tied to the ritual that once inhabited the house and is now attempting to return. Sarah finally begins to speak more clearly. She tells Luke that she's not from this time. She has come from a past where the town was consumed by darkness, long before the current generation was born. She describes the disappearance of her own family, explaining that they were part of a group of people who were sacrificed during a ritual meant to summon a powerful spirit. The spirits of the victims are trapped within the teddy bears, and Sarah, in her current form, is a trapped soul. As Luke listens, the realization hits him. Sarah is not just a frightened child. She is a lost soul, caught in a cycle that began with the very same ritual that plagued the town. Her appearance is no accident. Luke's connection to the case, his involvement in the past, is far deeper than he could have ever imagined. Luke and Olivia's investigation intensifies as they visit the homes of the families connected to the missing children. Each home holds a piece of the puzzle, and the deeper they dig, the stranger the connections become. One particular home stands out: the Johnson family, whose daughter, Emily, disappeared years ago. As Luke and Olivia speak with Mrs. Johnson, they notice a disturbing pattern. The family's home is filled with old photographs, many of which feature a familiar figure. The same man who Luke had seen in the visions earlier, the one tied to the ritual. Mrs. Johnson is a frail, nervous woman, and as they press her for answers, she begins to crack. She tells them that the family had been part of a secret group, a group that believed in controlling the dead, in reaching across dimensions to interact with the spirits of the departed. The bear, she explains, was the key to the ritual, a vessel used to contain the spirits. When Luke and Olivia bring up Sarah's name, Mrs. Johnson gasps in fear. She says the child isn't supposed to be alive, that the ritual should have consumed her long ago. As they leave the Johnson home, Luke's mind races. The more he learns, the more it seems like the town itself is steeped in a dark history. The disappearances were never random. They were sacrifices, part of a horrific pact made generations ago. Luke begins to question how much he truly understands about his own history and the town he grew up in. As Luke spends more time with Sarah, he begins to experience disturbing dreams. In the dreams, Sarah is always in the same place, a fog-filled forest, holding her teddy bear, whispering to someone or something just out of sight. Sometimes the dream shifts to show the ritual, the chanting, and the eerie figure that looms behind Sarah. Luke wakes up each morning feeling exhausted, as if the lines between dream and reality are blurring. One night, after another dream, Luke is jolted awake and finds himself standing outside in his backyard. His heart races, and the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. It's as if he had walked outside in his sleep. As he tries to shake off the feeling, he spots something near the tree line, a shadowy figure barely visible in the dark. Before he can react, the figure vanishes, leaving Luke questioning his own sanity. The next day, Olivia calls him with urgent news. Strange occurrences have been happening around town. Doors have been found ajar, lights flicker on and off, and a feeling of dread has settled over the community. It's clear to both of them that something dark is stirring once more, and the town's unsettling past is coming back to life. Luke begins to feel the weight of the mystery closing in on him, and Sarah's presence seems to be tied to these events in ways he can't yet comprehend. Luke and Olivia visit the town's old library, hoping to find records that might explain the origins of the ritual and the connection between the teddy bears and the disappearances. The library is dusty and forgotten, with rows upon rows of old books that haven't seen the light of day in decades. They are led to a hidden room at the back of the library, a small, dimly lit space where old town records are kept. As they sift through the brittle pages of forgotten histories, they discover an old journal. It belonged to a man named Nathaniel Brooks, a former member of the town's founding family. Nathaniel's writings detail strange occult practices, including rituals that were meant to summon spirits from another dimension. The journal reveals a chilling revelation. The town's founding families had made a pact with an ancient entity, one that required sacrifices to maintain the peace between the living and the dead. The teddy bears were part of the ritual, used to trap the souls of the sacrificed children. The journal mentions that the entity, known only as the Dark One, was bound to the town by the rituals, but its power was weakening, and the spirits it had trapped were restless. Luke's blood runs cold as he realizes that Sarah's presence in the town is no accident. She has returned to fulfill the prophecy that was made generations ago. The entity must be released. As Luke and Olivia continue to investigate, they find that the missing children were not randomly chosen. They were all descendants of the town's founding families, chosen for their bloodline. Sarah, as it turns out, is one of the last living descendants of the Brooks family. Her connection to the ritual runs deep, and it is clear that her arrival in the town is part of a larger plan, one that involves not just her own fate, but the fate of the entire town. Luke begins to experience more intense visions, seeing flashbacks of the original ritual and the faces of the children who were sacrificed. Each vision reveals more about the role of the teddy bears. Luke becomes obsessed with the idea that he's been chosen to stop the ritual, but every step he takes seems to pull him deeper into the entity's web. It's as though he is being drawn into a trap, and the closer he gets to the truth, the more dangerous the journey becomes. Luke's connection to the ritual is undeniable now. He is not just an observer. He is part of the story. But with every new revelation, he begins to feel as though the entity's influence is growing stronger. He can feel it watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake. Luke's investigation takes a dark turn when he learns that the first child to disappear, the one who was supposedly sacrificed to begin the pact with the entity, was someone close to his own family. His mother's old journal reveals that the Brooks family had once been close friends with his grandparents, and the disappearance of the first child marked the beginning of the town's descent into darkness. As Luke digs deeper into his family's history, he uncovers a disturbing secret. His own family had been involved in the ritual. His great-grandparents had participated in the sacrifices and played a key role in the pact. The more Luke learns, the more he realizes that he is not just a passive observer in this nightmare. He is tied to it, possibly even predestined to fulfill a role that he cannot escape.
Olivia is shocked by the revelations, but she refuses to let Luke face this darkness alone. Together, they confront the possibility that Luke's family might be responsible for some of the town's suffering. But Luke is determined to find a way to break the curse, even if it means confronting his own lineage and the sins of his ancestors. As the investigation progresses, Luke begins to realize that time itself is breaking down. His visions become more intense, and he starts to experience moments where he cannot tell if he is in the present or the past. Sometimes, when he wakes up, he finds himself in places he doesn't remember going, and other times, he hears voices from long ago. Sarah, too, is becoming more erratic. She speaks of places and people that Luke has never seen, but feels an unsettling familiarity with. He begins to suspect that the ritual has not only trapped spirits, it has warped time itself, allowing past and present to bleed into one another. The lines between reality and nightmare are becoming increasingly blurred, and Luke is losing his grip on what is real. As the town's curse tightens around them, Luke and Olivia race against time, trying to stop the ritual before the entity breaks free and consumes the world. Luke and Olivia discover that Sarah is the daughter of one of the original families involved in the ritual. Her father, a man named Jonathan Brooks, had tried to save her from the pact, but in doing so, he trapped her spirit within the teddy bear. Sarah is not merely a ghost. She is a trapped soul, one that has been forced to live in limbo for decades. Luke learns that in order to break the curse, Sarah must face her father, whose spirit is also bound to the entity. The reunion between Sarah and her father is emotionally charged, as the two struggle to reconcile their past. Sarah, devastated by the betrayal of her family, must make a choice: let go of the past and free herself, or continue the cycle of torment that has bound her to this world for so long. Luke and Olivia's search for the final piece of the puzzle leads them to the town's cemetery, where the original ritual was performed. They uncover an old gravestone that bears the name of Sarah's father, Jonathan Brooks. The inscription on the grave reads, "The sacrifice is eternal, but the end will come when the bloodline is broken." With this revelation, Luke realizes that the key to ending the curse lies in severing the bloodline, the very bloodline that connects him to the town's darkest secrets. But doing so will come at a cost, and Luke knows that he must make a difficult decision. The ritual is about to reach its climax, and the fate of everyone in the town rests in his hands. The town is on edge as strange occurrences escalate. Every night, the air feels heavier, and the once quiet streets are filled with a low hum, like something ancient stirring beneath the earth. Luke can feel the weight of time pressing down on him as he tries to put together the last pieces of the puzzle. He knows that whatever happens next will either save or doom them all. He's haunted by the words on Jonathan Brooks's gravestone. The sacrifice is eternal, but the end will come when the bloodline is broken. The revelation hits Luke like a thunderclap. He must sever the connection between the town, the ritual, and the entity. The bloodline that connects him to the ritual must be severed. His own family history is tied to the curse. Luke goes to Olivia, desperation in his voice. He tells her that he believes the only way to stop the ritual is to sacrifice the very bloodline that has perpetuated it. Olivia, though reluctant, understands that their options are running out. The entity's influence is growing stronger with each passing day. If they don't act soon, the town will be consumed by the darkness. Olivia and Luke visit the old church at the center of town, a place that has always felt like a silent sentinel watching over Ravenwood. Inside, they uncover the final pieces of the ritual's history. The church was the site where the original pact was made, where the dark entity was bound, and where the final sacrifice must occur. Luke begins to realize that the bloodline isn't just his, it's Sarah's too. She too is a part of the curse. But there's something else. The bloodline must be destroyed, not just severed. He cannot walk away from this unscathed.
Luke returns to Sarah, who is now becoming more unstable as the entity's power grows. She seems to know the ritual's final stages are approaching. Her teddy bear, once a symbol of innocence, now seems like a tether to something far darker. Her once childlike eyes are filled with wisdom, sorrow, and understanding beyond her years. As Sarah becomes more lucid, she reveals to Luke the true nature of her existence. "I wasn't supposed to survive," she whispers, "but I did. I was trapped in time, just like the others." Her eyes lock with Luke's, and she continues, "But now, I know. The bloodline. It's not just yours to end, it's mine too, and only when it's completely gone will the curse be broken." Luke is horrified. She's telling him that in order to save the town, to stop the entity from escaping, he must be prepared to sacrifice not only his past, but her future as well. Sarah isn't just a victim of the ritual, she is its culmination. Her very existence is the last thread holding the entity in place. If Sarah dies, the entity will be freed, and the ritual will be completed. She stands before him, her once innocent face now tainted with the weight of destiny. "You don't have to do this alone," she says, her voice tremulous but resolute. "If we end the bloodline, the curse will die. But we must choose, Luke. Together." But Sarah's words come with an added weight. Her death, her sacrifice, will not be in vain. It will be the final severance of the bloodline, the breaking of the pact that has bound the town for centuries. Sarah has known all along that her existence was a paradox, a shadow in time, a soul trapped between worlds. Only through her death can the ritual finally be undone. Luke doesn't want to lose her. He's fought so hard to protect her, but the realization begins to sink in. This is the only way to save the town, to free Sarah, and to end the ancient darkness that has consumed their world. The night has come. Luke, Olivia, and Sarah make their way to the church, the epicenter of the town's curse. The full moon casts an eerie light on the weathered stone, and the shadows seem to reach out, welcoming them into the darkness. As they approach the church's doors, an overwhelming sense of dread fills Luke's chest. It's as though the very earth beneath him is alive, pulsating with a dark energy. He can feel the presence of the entity, watching from the shadows, waiting for its chance to be released. Inside the church, the air is thick with the weight of centuries of bloodshed and despair. The altar stands at the center, an ominous reminder of the rituals performed here long ago. The walls are covered in ancient symbols, and the floor is stained with the remnants of past sacrifices. At the foot of the altar, a large stone slab sits, and Luke understands with sickening clarity that this is where the final act will take place. Olivia looks at Luke, her face pale but determined. "This is it," she says, her voice shaky but resolute. "We end it tonight, or it will never stop." Luke turns to Sarah, who is standing in front of the altar, clutching her teddy bear. Her face is peaceful, almost resigned. She knows what must be done. "It's time," she whispers. Luke approaches Sarah, his heart heavy with grief. He knows what he has to do. He reaches out to her, his hand trembling. "Sarah, I'm so sorry." But Sarah simply smiles, her eyes filled with a deep, knowing sadness. "It's not your fault, Luke," she says softly. This is the only way. We were always meant to do this together.
As Luke prepares to break the bloodline and end the ritual, the entity's presence grows stronger, more tangible. The temperature drops, and a heavy darkness descends upon the church. The walls seem to close in, and the air feels thick with the power of something ancient and malicious. The entity stirs, its eyes locked on Luke and Sarah. Suddenly, Sarah drops her teddy bear onto the altar. A low rumble echoes through the church, and the ground beneath them trembles. The entity, its form now partially visible, manifests as a dark, shifting mass of shadows, eyes gleaming with malice. The ritual is about to reach its climax. Luke and Olivia take their places on either side of Sarah, their hearts heavy with the gravity of the moment. They hold hands, their fingers intertwined, and together they recite the incantation that will sever the bloodline and destroy the entity once and for all. The shadows of the entity writhe, struggling against the binding words. As the incantation reaches its peak, Sarah steps forward, her voice clear and strong. Let the bloodline end. Let the darkness fade. Let the souls rest. The entity screeches in fury, but it's too late. The ritual has begun. A burst of blinding light fills the church, and the shadows that once threatened to consume everything are shattered by the power of the incantation. Luke and Olivia shield their eyes as the light explodes outward, enveloping the altar and engulfing the entity in a final destructive wave. When the light fades, the church is silent. The oppressive weight that had hung over Ravenwood for so long is gone. The shadows have lifted, and the air feels lighter, freer. Luke, Olivia, and Sarah stand in the ruins of the altar, the echoes of the ritual still resonating in the air. Sarah, her face filled with a peaceful serenity, stands in the center of the room. She looks at Luke one last time, her eyes filled with gratitude and sadness. "Thank you," she whispers. "You saved us all." Then, with a soft smile, Sarah begins to fade. The light around her grows stronger, and Luke feels the pull of the spirit world as Sarah's form dissipates into the ether. She is no longer trapped in the cycle of darkness. She is free. As Sarah disappears, Luke feels a weight lift from his heart. The curse is broken. The town of Ravenwood is free. The spirits of the lost children are finally at rest, their suffering ended. The entity that had once ruled over them is gone, vanquished by the very bloodline it sought to control. Luke stands in the church, his mind racing. Ravenwood will never be the same. The town will heal, and life will slowly return to normal. But Luke knows that he will never forget what happened here, the darkness that nearly consumed everything, and the brave souls who fought to end it. As he walks out of the church into the early morning light, Luke feels a sense of peace he hasn't known in years. Ravenwood may be free, but he will carry its scars with him forever.